We are going live.
We're live.
Just like that. Please, before we do anything, in the comments, if you do or don't like Bombos' hat, please let us know. We've had some criticism of Bombos' hat wear, and we just like to settle a score that we presently have.
We don't have a score. I just want to say I personally love your hair today.
Thank you. It's receding perfectly. Today we have
Dipti Tait.
And we have her discussing good grief, and not like the Snoopy good grief, but the grief that one has when they're going through pain and they're like, well, how do I make the best out of this?
Yeah. On
A Wonderful Chaos. Bambos is so nasty right now. He said, wouldn't it be great if we just put the guest on alone and just let them show up and we just sit and watch and see what they do? That would be nasty. That would just be nasty. And leave them there for the hour and just let them go at it. We'll watch and see how they do. I see Dipti talking. We can't hear you, Dipti. I'm sure, knowing what I know of Dipti, she'd have no problem with that hour. I can tell you.
She'll probably.
We would have to take somebody who didn't want to be on the show and just say, "Hey, this is an experiment in performance art." So,
how are you today?
It's been an emotional time. The book, having done as well as it has done so far, was really intense for me. In a way, I asked a lot of people to support it, and a lot of people did. And a lot of people I didn't even know that well did. And I felt like I received a lot of love, and it was really emotional. And then seeing it be number one, in the Netherlands is like, wow, that's absurd. And I was two places ahead Matthew McConaughey. 2 places behind Alex Trebek.
Andy, I'm going to touch you. You're famous.
But I mean, in a way, it felt like an arbitrary goal when I said, hey, help me out, buy a book and see how much exposure we can get. And I did it because I have often found in my own life, if I don't set a goal, then everything just becomes arbitrary. So just pick an arbitrary goal and go for it. And that's what I did. And in a way, I live really in gratitude. I have very little expectation in my life. So if it didn't say do anything, I still would have been incredibly grateful. But now that this has happened, there's like but my mentor Case would always say he didn't like the word overwhelm. He said there's a whelm. There's just a whelm of it. Like I'm feeling whelmed. And that's how I felt today. and yeah, even now if I talk, I could just cry. It just feels like I've been given an incredible amount of love. And and that's how it feels. And I didn't know what I would expect, but I don't know. I certainly didn't expect that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. How are things for you at the moment?
In a good flow, I would say. Yeah.
Nice. Anything specifically, or?
Well, if I'm doing what I love, photography, it just expands my heart.
And you're doing it again.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, it hasn't been easy not having worked the last months, right?
Jesus, but it was good to go through, receive support from you also. And yeah.
Thank you, Bolala.
Here you go.
There's no tissue in there.
I know.
Bastard. Yeah.
So Dipti Tait, Andy.
Yeah, I asked I think a few weeks ago when I wanted to prepare a few shows before I went on my trip, I reached out to people, and I reached out to Dipti Tait's boyfriend, you know, and he says, "I'm not talking to you, but Dipti will." And then I looked and thought, okay, well, who's Dipti? Let's have a look.
So who was her boyfriend then?
I have no idea. It's someone not important, obviously, because now Dipti's with us. And then immediately, Dipti was such like a bubbly personality. I'm like, yeah, I don't care what we talk about. Let's just put her on and we'll have a fun hour. That was clear to me then. And the one show, I think our guest didn't show up. And I sent a text to Dipti and said, "Hey, Dipti, we're on in 10 minutes. You want to join?" Right? She knew nothing about us. And I think she was a bit caught off guard. Like, I guess I could have. I have no idea what you do, but I thought it would be fun to have just a guest on who had no clue what they were going into or anything. But now we came here. So
you're also a bit of a prankster, aren't you?
I didn't think it was a prankster. I think we're called A Wonderful Chaos because we like it that way. And part of that is inviting guests on randomly and just having talks for an hour. Yeah.
You mean like this?
Yes, like that. There she is.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Hello. What?
Can you hear me now? Hello?
We hear you. It would be great just to bluff our way. We actually had one show where the audio didn't work on our end, so we actually had to ask questions to somebody and we couldn't hear their answers, and we did that for an hour.
But the people watching could.
Everyone watching could hear except for us, so we were really interviewing someone and
sign language and like lip reading.
Yes.
Enunciate. Clearly. Speak louder. Well, no, don't. Hi, guys. No.
Hey, so you've got a book, and your book is also doing quite well, as I saw. It's called Good Grief, and I even printed a bit out because it was pretty simple to read, and I thought, I don't want to memorize this. There it is. Throw it up there so everyone can see. And it's like, grief can be your best friend or your worst enemy. Have you ever heard anyone say anything like that, Bambos? Whether we are grieving for a loved one or for a time in our lives that is past, each loss we face brings with it an element of change. And I would even add to that potential joy. Our abilities to step out of the old and adjust to the new can often be held back by our fear of these changes, preventing us from defining a new positive pathway. Whatever your loss or whoever you are however you're adjusting to it, this book can help you move forward into a state of acceptance. Yes. Nice. And I can only attest to everything you've just written for the book, for sure. Yeah. And I think what you're stating in this is so obvious to me. I'm confused when people don't see it. I'm in the other camp.
So a book has to be written.
I think I wrote a book. She wrote a book. We've both written books around this subject. What brought you to that subject?
So pretty much like you, loss of parent, loss of both parents, actually. So I lost both my parents kind of when I was a little bit, well, I suppose I was in my 20s when my dad passed away, and then in my 30s when my mum passed away. And I am an only child. So I kind of got plunged into this, I don't know, mental orphanage in my head. And even though I have other family and cousins and, people who knew my parents, it's really different when it's your mum and dad, isn't it? So no one else can understand that. Well, I thought no one else could understand that. And so I decided to write my thoughts down in this very random way. There was no logic. There was no sense to any of it. So I recognized, I love the way you talked about whelm and overwhelm, but I was definitely in overwhelm at that time. There was no whelm going on. It was all over. And I felt that my emotions, well, I kind of met these emotions that I'd never felt before as well. So they're all new feelings to me. And I thought, well, okay, they must have a purpose, these emotions. Bearing in mind, I'm about 25 now at this point. So let me try and figure it out myself, because no one else knows what I'm going through. Only I do. And so I started to write them in different little diaries. So I had an emotional diary for sadness, and then I had one for loneliness, and one for guilt, and one for anxiety and fear. And so anyway, they developed into these kind of compendiums of, I don't really know, what's that thing when you just write and it doesn't make sense?
Yeah, free form or free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just basically nonsense.
But just help me understand, you had a different book for each emotion, and you would pick up that specific book and write in it when you felt that emotion?
Yeah.
So you might have had guilt, and then you would have written 10 years over a 5-year period.
So, like, say I was feeling, but as you know, the emotions don't come alone, they kind of travel together. So I might have had in my hand at this point loneliness, guilt, anxiety, fear. And then if I had a thought, I would go, okay, where does that belong? And then that was kind of my weird way of trying to make sense of it. I know.
It's fascinating. I think it's incredible. I would have loved if I'd pick up the book every time I had like a feeling of guilt and said, oh, let me track back every time I could trace that feeling and have documented it.
Yeah, so then I literally had a book of guilt, a book of fear, a book of anxiety, a book of sadness. But then what was happening was it was really interesting because I then had kind of favorite books I would write in. So guilt was not one of my favorite books. That was one I really didn't want to pick up. So that's when I kind of realized that I could pick up and put down whatever I wanted to. I had control. So this was interesting. It was kind of my own experiment, really. And then I realized, actually, you know what? I could just shred guilt. It's just so worthless because there's no I don't think that I might be wrong. You might have a different answer to me, but personally, I don't think there's any positive in guilt.
No, I mean, clearly not. But I mean, some people have it, they need it. So yeah, that's their whatever the bag they get to carry for the rest of their lives.
But why would someone, but slow down, why would someone who feels guilty?
Oh, I can tell you 20 reasons. So if for instance, give you an example. This isn't the case, but I'm just going to present it. So my mom, was killed by the drunk driver, and say, for instance, I wrote my mom a letter that she got right before she died, but my 2 brothers didn't. Could you imagine how they may have felt if they hadn't, and they had some attachment to it? I've never discussed it with them, but let's just say for a moment that they did. How would it have felt for them to say, "Well, I didn't do that. I feel guilty. I didn't do that." And in some weird way, that guilt is serving sort of a role for them at that moment. And that's their whatever they need to sort of attach to, and then hopefully at some point it would gestate.
Yeah.
This is just an example of something, just to make sure.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
And then you can't deny that for somebody because they have to go through it, don't they? So like when my mum died, it was the 29th of November 2011, and on the 8th of November 2011 was her birthday, and about a week before her birthday we'd had an argument and I didn't go and see her on her birthday. Obviously, if I knew that she'd be dead 3 weeks later, I'd have gone and seen her. But then I chose not to have guilt about that, because I knew that the argument was bad enough for me to make that choice at the time, because I'm not a bad person. I'm not mean. I'm not vindictive. I'm none of these things. So I knew that the guilt was there to try and protect me maybe, but I didn't need it. So I've never allowed myself to feel guilty about that.
Yeah, but let's agree she was an Indian. All Indian moms are a bit troublesome.
Yeah, I mean, she was totally.
Are you trying to?
I knew she would agree. Are you kidding me? No.
I'm not talking about her. I know she receives.
Oh yeah.
I'm talking about some weirdo in the audience now.
Now that we've offended. Listen, I had a Jewish dad and a Catholic mother. I got enough guilt on all sides of that coin. I mean, and they all had their ways of manipulating. You learned a lot through the religious guilt. Yeah.
Well, Bam didn't even know I was Indian until about 5 minutes ago. So there we go.
Yeah, you're just really tan.
Why have you got a tan? Oh, because I've been to like Barbados.
Are you trying to be funny?
No.
Yes.
I don't try to be funny. I just am funny.
Yes, accepted, Bambos. Ugh.
So I had all these diaries, and then in the end, I was like, what am I going to do with them all? And then one of my, I've had a coach slash friend. We went to see her one day, and then she said, "Let me have a look at them." And I was like, "No." And then she said, "I'm a book writing coach. We could just turn it into a book." And I was just like, "No, you can't. It's a load of stream of consciousness." That's what the word I was trying to think of.
Stream, yeah.
She said, "No, we can do it. Sure, we'll just do it." And so then we did. And that was that, really. But now I'm on my second book. I'm writing Planet Grief. And that's coming out in 2021. There's a bit of a twist in that one, though.
They survive in the end.
I have the elixir, Yeah.
There's two things you said that registered with me. One was, I think when an individual hasn't lost one or both parents, they can't imagine the feeling of loneliness that one has. It's as if the one person you felt would always be there for you, or the comfort, is now gone. And it's a weird thing. I think if you try to imagine it before it's happened, then it's impossible, because you create the idea like, oh, I can deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's like no one, it says I'm getting older. I'm like, okay, dad, grandma, grandpa died, mom, dad died, and then I'm the next in line. That's what you start to see. And there's a graduation of, and I think that gets to the good grief part of it for me, is that when does the sadness actually not become something that you avoid, but something that brings you closer to them because you find a place for it inside of yourself? And it took me most of my life to get there. Like when Bolalang, who makes this comment, "Do cry, Andy, don't bottle it up," he's really giving me a gift, because he's really saying, Andy, let that emotion be, because that's when you're fully embodying what's true for you in this moment. And if there's one thing I've been feeling more in my age, is that I'm really feeling closer to just that sense of the momentary emotion, even if it doesn't necessarily feel, even if it isn't what would be called a good emotion, as it were.
Yeah, it's discomfort. And I think if we learn how to be comfortable in discomfort, that's one of the most amazing, skills we could have, because life isn't comfortable quite often, as we've just seen for the last 7-8 months. Things can come out of nowhere, out of the blue, and hit you, bam, bam, double bam, bam, aren't they? And you were a photographer, and now you're not suddenly. So what are you? Who are you? Where are you? Where's your identity linking to all of this stuff? And because we've linked our identities to the planet, because that's what we live on, if something goes wrong with the planet, something goes wrong with us, and that's kind of where I'm at now with the next book. It's about recognizing that we can be separate to all of this, and we can even be separate to death in a funny way, as in we are going to die. If we just go with we are going to die, the end, and we start with that, and we're born with an imaginary shelf life, and we actually, like a best before date. I am stamping that on me now, and that's it. After that, I'm done. I'm over. You would live life so much more differently, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You said something really interesting. If there's something, if the planet is not doing good, can you say that again?
Yeah, so we've linked our identity of who we are on this planet as earthlings, as beings, to the sort of existence of the planet and the health of the planet and the happiness of the planet. So it's just using COVID as an example because that's affected everybody all at once, and that's quite an unusual thing to have happened to all of us at once. And okay, maybe we've all had different experiences through it, but actually we've all had to change something quite drastic, haven't we, in our lives? Therefore, we've had to change something quite drastic in our thinking and our behavior. So obviously some people have had people die, and they've had to accept that or go through this really weird type of funeral on Zoom, which is a very strange concept, isn't it? So when we've linked our identity and our worth and our value to the planet, if something happens to the planet, then we get knocked off. So this is quite a deep understanding. If we are okay with whatever happens, whether that is war, devastation, famine, starvation, anything, whatever, whoever dies, whoever lives, whoever is in our life or not in our life, and whatever we're going through, if we're still just default okay with discomfort, then we're going to be okay whatever happens. That's my understanding.
I've always seen the planet as a reflection, like how the planet is doing is how we are relating to ourselves. So when shit hits the fan, it pretty much tells us about the relationship people have with themselves as a majority.
Yeah, so the planet's a big mirror.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's the biggest lover you've ever had.
The biggest lover and the biggest hater, right? So,
And something that really pops out in me is that you have a extremely bubbly energy, like very. And I'm wondering, did this come out from celebrating yourself at some point, or was that how you were as a little one?
Yeah, I think I was born like this. So I was 2 pounds when I was born, tiny, and I was 3 months early. So I couldn't wait to get here, clearly. And my mum went in for an antenatal checkup and came out with a baby. Well, didn't come out with a baby, but I was put in a box for a few months. But yeah, so I think I was dying to get here. And I think I've just been, my name means little sparkle of light. So I think I've just lived up to my name. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I just want, I think everyone's got sparkle inside of them, haven't they? They really do. We've all got that light inside of us, but sometimes we just don't know it's there.
Yeah, of course.
What is she going on about now, weirdo?
No.
Actually, yeah.
I'm sort of like I was staying up on the bubbly side of the conversation. I saw Bambos going more in sort of this grounding energy, so I'm kind of waiting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah,
it's like, do we go deeper? Do we try to like push the edge envelope of grounding some pain out of you? Like, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you, Dipti?
Well,
that's a really bad question.
It's a horrible question. I don't even want you to go there, Dipti, please.
I don't even know
no, Dipti, it was really a joke. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't bite.
I know that because I don't know the answer.
I don't know what my mom's death would be the one, I'm sure, for me.
But even my mum's death and my dad's death, I don't think they're the worst things that have happened to me. I just don't think they are. I think they're the best things that have happened to me.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I can't think of something that's that terrible because everything's good.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. I think I love how you've articulated that, because so I would say there's sort of the two players in my head. There's the one player, the seer, and then there's the beer. and they're kind of playing and intermingling with one another. So the seer sees the wonder and the beauty, and actually sees in the death, I realize really how much I love my mom. It's in that death that I get to experience the love. And also the pain, but that pain isn't necessarily need to be attached negative. It's just, wow, that's just it's almost in the pain. It's a testament to how much I loved her.
Yeah.
But there's that weird play, because if you go to sleep at night and you close your eyes and then you're kind of in your more subconscious, all the thoughts come rushing in from the very identified at you. And then you're like, wow, that also is part of me. So, and I've seen, we'll often, Bambos and I will kind of joke, because we'll have people that are speaking as the enlightened ones, right? That have projected enlightenment onto themselves.
Yeah.
And we always kind of have a bit of a chuckle, because it's always a state experience. There's no enlightened. There's a person who has less issues with an issue than another person.
Yeah.
So they are not enlightened in that area, and they're not maybe enlightened in another area, right? So yeah. But as I hear you speak, what I reflect back is that, yeah, if we really were honest from the seer, we're just here having this experience together, and there's emotions that come up, and as long as we embrace all of them, then it's all beautiful.
Yeah. It really, I wouldn't want to not have my emotions. I don't really want to be a psychopath, really.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I don't. I think that would be sad. I think a psychopath wouldn't be sad about that.
Well, at least you have sadness as an emotion.
Yeah, but psychopaths don't get sad either. So.
Oh yeah.
I would be. I'd just be like. I mean, if you're a psychopath, you're just. I don't know.
So tell me about the relationship with your husband, because clearly he's very different than you, because he said, I'm not going to go on your show, but Dipti will.
I'm not married.
I said, we talked about this. Sorry. Your boyfriend, your live-in man.
Yeah. That man I live with who happens
who tolerates you all these years.
What did you want to know about Toby?
I want to know, how is your relationship? Because you're bubbly. He's British, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So he's emotionally shut down. We already know this of most British men.
He's not, though. This is he's like he's so connected, and he doesn't even. He's just like my soulmate.
Really? So, that's and how did that happen in Toby?
How did it happen to Toby?
No, I mean, like I've had the pleasure of even living in the UK for some time, and there is a thing that I would explain: British restraint. So, one thing I always saw in Britain was everyone was emotionally shut down, but they'd all be having sex with one another in the office. Like, I'd never seen so much dysfunction. It was always, we're shut down, but we're all having these affairs inside of the company. And it was like, wow, it's weird for me to see you have to go out on a Friday night, get really drunk, and then express yourself. And then basically you go back, put a suit on, and pretend like you're, someone you're really not.
Yeah.
And I've seen so much of that in the meantime, that the stereotype is formed into a real kind of sense of, I know that persona.
So back to Toby.
So how was that with Toby?
So I think he did all of that dysfunction in his youth, and then he woke up one day, literally, and that's why he made his film. That's how I think that's how you found him, was to film Waking Up on YouTube, and you connected with him through that. Is that?
That would have been it. Yes. I don't remember it, but now that you repeat it back, yes.
And so I think then there was this kind of, he's a filmmaker and a photographer as well, and like he retouches, and so he had this kind of urge inside of him to kind of share this waking up experience that he'd had, which he didn't really know what it was, and he just wanted to ask other people if they knew what it was. So that's kind of led him on to looking at different kind of talking to different people like Muji and Tim Freak, and people who've written books about this, and philosophers, and then that's how the film came about. And then through that, I suppose through the making of that film, he understood what had happened to him. That was quite. So
you got lucky, and you met someone who actually did a lot of self-development.
Yeah, when we both got together, we both looked at each other's bookshelves And we were like, snap, 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 snap. And I was like, wow, if you ever move in, we're going to have to either have like, duplicates of basically every single book, or you can get rid of yours and just keep mine, because I don't read, clearly, because mine is so precise.
Yeah.
Spines haven't been bent.
Beautiful.
Funny. And then we had loads of Buddhas as well, so we had to like move all the Buddhas in. We're not even Buddhist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Isn't it funny how that works? I've seen some beautiful comments on that. Like, Buddha is not meant to be used for your advertising or your Chinese restaurant or your, like we've mass produced Buddhas, and we've never really given much thought to the fact that there's a
even a coffee shop in Amsterdam.
Yeah, that there's
the Buddha bar.
You don't see Jesus outside restaurants.
No, and that was their point. Their point was, you don't see Jesus plastered everywhere. Why would you think Buddha's appropriate?
Jesus kebabs.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I hadn't thought of that. I don't know. Maybe I just resonate with the Buddhist philosophy. I mean, I'm not religious, but maybe.
Yeah, I think I've certainly found Buddhist to be the closest thing to connect to how I live in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I've found for sure. And I think it comes to the, except for I'm not into the life is suffering.
Can I take control of this conversation?
You can, but when you've been taking control of this conversation lately, I haven't seen us go in any direction where I've been getting excited. So I want
you to get excited?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. Thank you.
I love this. I notice I'm sitting with, it's my daughter's birthday today. And I haven't seen her for 4 years now. And in a way, I don't really talk about her. And I didn't really want to bring it up in the show, but I realized it's either I'm going to bring her up or we're going to talk half an hour about Buddha and Jesus. I don't want to do that anymore.
Oh, what's your daughter's name?
Yuki.
Yeah. How old would she be today?
11.
11. It's a good number. Nice.
So even saying it out loud, I just see how my heart is beating really fast, because somewhere out there's a little bunny, and she's got my eyes, and she's celebrating herself today.
Happy birthday, Yuki.
Happy birthday.
And then I realized maybe she'll watch one of these episodes by accident and see that I bring her up.
Yeah.
11's a special number too, isn't it?
Was that good enough?
Beautiful. I can always tell when Bambos has something brewing, because he'll often sort of take a very stoic thing and I don't feel him embodying the emotion. And I was feeling that before, which is what I said, why I was like, I don't know where you're going, because I didn't feel embodying it. And now I'm like, oh yeah, now we're back to just being together.
Yeah, the thing with me, if I'm holding something, I see it prevents me from being fully present.
Yeah.
So in a way, the consequence will be, or I speak it and reveal it and let the chips fall where they may, or I sit here and listen to you guys speaking about Jesus and Buddha.
Yeah. I wonder for you and everyone in this case, right? Because I find one of the hardest things that we've talked about through the years is making peace with helplessness. Like, you can't decide if another person is going to meet you in your desire to connect. You can only do everything possible to make it less likely that they'll go away.
Yeah.
That's all you got. Yeah.
So today I thought about sending a message, and the contact person is the mother, and I just find myself holding the phone and I just can't send a message. It's like I feel paralyzed to send a message, and then I did the same last year. The year before I did, and it's sending a message and just knowing there's nothing coming back. I don't even know if she gets it, but it's more, hey, I'm here.
The gesture of it. Yeah. If you did do it, what would be good about that?
Oh, then I'm not holding back love, actually. So now that I've said it out loud,
if you were going to do it, when would you do it?
now?
Yeah. You do that now.
Nice.
You do that now, and I'll talk to Dipti while you're doing
it.
You talk to Dipti.
I see something that I actually wanted to mention while you spoke earlier, and Bolalang, interestingly enough, has also brought a question to us, and he says, which I find fascinating, I never remember the dates people died, even the ones I dearly loved. Is that normal? People around me do remember them. And I had a very interesting, because you mentioned this earlier about knowing the dates when they were born, the birthday, and when they died. I do not know when my mom and dad were born, but I can sure as hell tell you the day they died. And it's amazing, because that day, so much in my life changed that's the day that is, I wouldn't say memorialized. I would say that's the day that's like that bang. Everything was different. January 23rd for my dad, and I believe May 8th for my mom. And that's just it. It was April 8th. It's so long now. I'm getting better at forgetting. But the dates that are so pertinent to me are the ones when the people died. And he asked the question, so how is that for you?
I mean, the thing is about normal. The word normal is an interesting word, anyway.
Isn't it? Sure.
Because your normal and my normal are not the same. You know, we don't share the same version of normal. So for some people, dates are very, very important, and for other people, they're not. You know, that's just how it is, and it just kind of depends on what you place your value on. You know, in fact, for me, I remember a few dates, and they are birthdays, death days, and that's probably about it. You know, I don't remember anything else. I have no idea when I graduated. I have no idea when I got my certificate for this or that. No. I mean, so dates, yeah, you're right. It depends on how significant, what happened on that day, you know. So, you know, we remember September the 11th. Why? Because it's drilled into us, you know. And it's just because it's there, you know, and that becomes a thing.
You know what I noticed in my life is near to those dates, I'd always get really depressed. And not knowing that the date was coming, but it was an autism. It was just in my system. Yeah. And then I'd feel really depressed, and then I would like not know why, and then I would laugh. Say, oh, it's the date. It was as if my subconscious was really aware of how painful that day was for me, and it just kept coming back.
Yeah, that's interesting. Even though your conscious doesn't know what the date is. Yeah. Maybe it's also, I don't know whether it's like, is it an energy around that time? Because like maybe a seasonal thing. I mean, I don't know where Bolang lives, but we obviously in England have seasons. So even when the temperature changes and it gets autumnal, for example, that could be a trigger for me, because it was in the autumn when I found out they had cancer. And, you know, that then triggers another thing that could be, you know, this leaf on a tree, or this, you know, this kind of blooming bud, and it can only happen at that month, you know. So those can also be contributing factors, can't they, of reminders of time.
Yeah. How are you after having sent the message, Bambos?
Yeah.
Just holding my breath for a moment. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. How did it feel?
Like part of me disconnects from feeling because we don't have any tissues. And if I'm making jokes, it means I can feel. Do I use the word? I can feel the pain, but I can also feel the love in that.
Yeah.
Like it feels like, oh, the capacity to love is also my capacity to also allow that pain to be there, or else I can't just do one of them.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Good job. You did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for both of you holding that space.
That was nice.
Yeah, I am a firm believer, if that's the word, that once the feeling is experienced, it unless it's acted on immediately, then it corrupts everything I'm doing. So when Bambo said, I'd like to ask a question, and I said, I don't want you to ask another question, it was really because I was feeling Bambo's not feeling.
Yeah.
And then obviously he knew what I was pointing at and said, I'm gonna screw you here. I'm gonna give it to you so you know that, you know.
This is serious.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Now let's get serious about this. You know, and that's the thing. Feelings don't have to be serious, do they? Even negative feelings, they don't have to be serious. Why do we make them?
Yeah, but I mean, if you suppress them, in the case of we're just talking now where Bambos was a few moments earlier, then you can feel how contorted we then act in the world, because it's like we didn't let go of the thing that's stuck, and now we're still acting in the world, but in essence, it's not coming from flow anymore.
I just love being used as an example.
Yeah, well, now is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I've worked with Bambo so many years. I know when he's not kind of fully embodied. The humor tends to be a little bit more crass, less grounded. And then I'm like, oh, something's not there. And then I didn't ask, actually, which I sometimes I'll ask on the show, but we kind of have been trying to figure out how do we engage one another when we're not feeling fully present.
That's so nice. And it's so nice that you both have that connection and, subliminal understanding. So nice.
Yeah.
You're like married, but not married.
Yeah.
I've asked him to adopt me and I can live in the attic, but
you like to think of me as dad, right?
I know.
Yeah.
Funny.
My Jewish dad.
I had to segue to another kind of topic. I'm sorry I burped, and I don't think that was a very nice thing to do. I'm sorry about that. I had a very serious talk today with a mutual friend of ours whose father has ALS, and he, most likely doesn't have long to live. And he called me with this father on the phone today and said, listen, I'm going to put you on speaker with my dad. And I just want you kind of to talk to both of us around how do we engage this time together? Like, how do we spend these times? And his father was also having some difficulties already speaking, so even that was a challenge. And I was there, and as I talked, I started to cry, because what I realized was that how we go through that experience very much depends on how we frame that experience. If I say I'm going to lose faculty after faculty after faculty, and then feel remorse and pain every time that happens, then it's almost the struggle in letting go of life. And if you say, I am going to be losing faculty after faculty after faculty, and we're going to celebrate it one after the other together, and I hope we're going to laugh a lot, and I hope we're going to share it and I could cry now talking about, and I hope we're going to share it as a moment that we can celebrate the time we have together and laugh about how absurd this is.
Nice.
And And if we can't celebrate that as the time we get to have together in the middle of that absurdity, then actually the whole experience becomes a holding on to life, where actually we don't get the moment to be with the person we're with at that time, because we're not actually, we're still attaching to the thing. You you called it the planet earlier in the talk. Yeah.
How did she feel when you said that to her?
What I gathered was they were smiling, and there was a lot of acknowledgement and laughter. I had the impression that the one dying is also far more, they got to a point in their life where it was just about retirement. They'd succeeded. They got everything they wanted, sold their business. It was now time to live the life that they had planned for in retirement. And now that retirement doesn't happen. So in some weird way, there was not only the loss of life, but the loss of the expectation of what this stage of life was supposed to look like.
It's a different type of retirement.
Yeah. So it was beautiful to be with them there, and just sort of, hold space and frame, because I think, we talk about priming a brain, framing things in a way that allow you to experience it differently.
Yeah.
And I see it's hard for people to frame things in a way when they have an expectation of what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And if you just find the piece of saying, celebrating the absurdity of what actually is and not what it should or could have been, then you're just back in the fact that we get this time together, and how great is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing there is that words are so powerful. And when we all have a different relationship to every single word, because every single word references differently in our own mind. So when we're talking about even things like, loss, if people don't want to lose things, they'll focus on the loss, because that will be the problem. But then sometimes if you lose something, you find something else. So if we think about what have we found in the loss, then you're taking them away from the thing that's gone, and you're taking them into something that's new or being revealed, and it couldn't have got there without the space being made,
Yeah.
So there's, I think with, because obviously I'm a hypnotherapist, Archie, that's not obvious because you might not have known that.
But that's on your resume.
And that's what we do all day long, is helping people reframe, not necessarily a negative into a positive, but more into something that just generally feels like they can cope with it better. So whatever that is, like loneliness, if someone keeps saying, I'm lonely, I'm lonely, I'm lonely, that's not going to feel nice. It's going to feel like they're going to suffer. It's isolating, but if you can turn it into, I have some peace and quiet, I have time to myself, I have some me time, then it suddenly feels like a luxury, and it's nice, So it's interesting how things can be reframed quite simply. Yeah.
Yeah, I often see in these. Do you have anything, by the way? Because you're also.
No, I'm good.
I've been doing a lot of couples counseling at the moment, and I've noticed that a lot of the counseling has to do with people projecting onto another person and blaming them for their feelings. And I always laugh, because I feel like I'm a Google Translate, and then I'm like, okay, so I'm going to say the same thing to that person in a way that they now can receive it. I'm going to say this now back to him in the way, and I'm going to say back to her, like, and then each one's like, oh yeah. And I've noticed that when you're working, I tend not to define things you should do, because then I don't see it as being authentic. And yet people need tools. So there's a bit of a challenge in that. How do you, and I kind of approach it more in a Zen approach, where I just want people to be around me enough that it becomes an autism. They kind of understand it through kind of osmosis. That's my general technique of helping and supporting people. yeah, I just found it interesting because when we were talking about reframing things, if I've often been saying that when I work, I just take everything through the filter of love, and then everything just makes sense when it comes out of my mouth. And I don't.
That's really beautiful.
That's nice. Yeah, really. Because it's your intention then, isn't it? Because then it's coming through.
So what you're saying is when people talk to you, the tendency for us is to really project something negative and we get offended.
Yeah. It's personal.
Yeah.
It's what Dipti said is we've made the planet we've attached to something in the planet, and then that thing is now what we're defending in ourselves. Instead of just saying, okay, they've said, you're a real asshole. Okay. Now you would think to yourself, well, the defensive reaction would say, hey, I got to defend against this. But the loving reaction would be, wow, they really must be suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Like what causes someone to get so far that they have to say that?
And it's about them, isn't it? It's an opinion, and their opinion is valid, so whatever they say is right from their point of view.
Yeah.
And actually when you're with couples as well, it's nice to know when they said something. So that person said something, it's nice to say, what did you hear? Because it's really nice to hear what they think that person has said.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting.
I don't like asking that question sometimes.
Why?
Because I see it reaffirms the old paradigm of how they're processing the information. And not always, but say 9 times out of 10, I can already tell what their answer is going to be before they state it.
Yeah.
Because they've made interpretations around the intention of the words.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd
like to know that their interpretation, I think, because I like to hear what their frame is.
Yeah.
And then it gives me, it's like I feel like I'm a bit like a Miss Marple, clues. So it gives me a bit of information as to, how they're referencing. So then if you know that they're referencing in X, Y, and Z, and they might need to change that. Obviously, we as coaches, we can't do the changing. We just point the sat nav in the right direction. But it's interesting, isn't it, to hear people's filter.
Yeah, wild.
Yeah.
And so predictable, so damn predictable. That's the saddest part, is that once you can hear the assumptions being made, and then because of the assumption, the interpretation of what's being said is seen with the assumption that's already existing that they're not even aware of. It's just, I feel helpless there.
But I guess in a way, we've all got to be making assumptions at all times, haven't we? Otherwise our brain would just be like, I don't know, jelly. So we've got to go with one of the assumptions, don't we? But whether or not it's right or not is the question. It might not be.
Yeah, but like that would be a whole nother show we could get into. Like, what if we just said there weren't any assumptions? There's just things happening, and apparently you're not happy right now. And that's it. Like, there's because then I don't even need to get into a story,
Yeah, exactly. But again, grief is a story in itself, in a way.
Yeah, true. Very true. Yeah.
People tell that story based on, the media, based on the news, based on what their dad said it was like, or, their friend went through. So we're collecting all these stories, and then we get to it and we're like, oh, wait, now we've got to make our own story.
Yeah.
So the story can be dramatic, if we choose it to be. My dad died when I was 23, and so I thought I was really old then, but I wasn't. I was a baby, and I thought I knew the world. I thought I had everything, in place in my head, but I didn't know anything. And he was quite because I'm his only daughter, so he was, you can imagine, an Indian, by the way, bam. So you can imagine he was, I don't mean controlling in a negative way, just what's the better word for that? You know,
he was hoping that you would live a life where he felt that he didn't need to worry about you.
Yeah, he was hoping I'd be a doctor or a dentist or something
Yeah.
like that.
My dad wanted me to be a lawyer. So that's what he, yeah.
5 children.
Yeah, exactly. So he was that type of, you know, protective kind of role. So he basically made all my decisions for me. He chose my A levels.
Wow.
He told me when I was supposed to learn to drive, what day I'm going to take my test. You know, he did everything like that for me. So then when he came out of my mum was a little bit of a chocolate teapot, to be fair. She kind of was controlled by him in that way as well. So she didn't really have very much agency with how she lived her life either.
Mm-hmm.
So then obviously he then dies, and then me and my mum are like, now what? You know?
Mm.
And so then she went into child mode, and I had to go into parent mode. And then we did this weird role reversal thing.
Wow.
So now I'm the parent of my mum, and my dad's not there, and I don't have a parent anymore. So it was a bit weird, to be fair.
And I had the same, in my case, I was the youngest of 3. My mom really, she really, really hung on my oldest brother for support, which was really unfair to him because he didn't get to be the child that actually he could have been. So it was really sad. And I saw for him, he and I had struggles throughout the years because since he took this role of being the father to me, I had to say, dude, we're about the same age. We're brothers, you know, you're not responsible for my life. And it took us time to find, you know, and now weirdly, that was my issue as well, by the way, of course, because I was then defensive, I need to be whatever, an adult. So now I'm very happy to be baby, you know?
I know, same.
Yeah.
Bam, are you a baby?
I'm the middle one.
Oh, the middle child. No hope.
It's done. We're done.
Yeah. We only get dribs and drabs of Bambos's history of life because it's pretty rough.
Now you're gonna make her feel sorry for me. Are you feeling sorry for me?
No.
Okay, good.
No, I didn't think she'd feel sorry for you.
You haven't had a rough life. You've had a perfect life, and you're meant to have this life. And you are.
I would never have met you if that stuff didn't happen, right?
That's true.
Exactly. It's all good, isn't it?
I you know, when I say rough, I think I'm enjoying the way this conversation is going. It is the emotional Andy that hears the story and that cringes inside because he is empathetically feeling what it would have felt like to have been the child who would have experienced that. Yeah. So it's a very much embodied experience of, wow, if I felt that and then projected and felt it as you, we make assumptions, of course, but the feeling of it, I have that very much empathetic response to stories. So whenever Bambosa shares one of those stories, I kind of want to throw up. That's the feeling I have.
So tissues and bucket.
Yeah.
That's probably why he doesn't do it live then.
No,
He's already thrown up.
By the way, which is nice, is Bola Long is really enjoying your choice of words, which is really sweet.
Thank you. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's a good compliment, actually.
It is.
It would be so funny to have her and Kenny on the same show.
Yeah, Kenny was our guest yesterday. He spent over 20 years in prison and came out with a big awakening, or he was in prison with the awakening.
Oh, cool.
I think he did a Buddha laugh, 40% of the show.
Oh, yeah.
He had this amazing laugh.
I want to meet Kenny.
Kenny is incredible. If you want to get him on a show, we strongly suggest this. Being with that energy is incredible. Yeah.
That's so cool. So how did he have his awakening? Or it's probably a
he had a name I can't pronounce now because they're always a little bit funky. Person come to the prison and they basically gave him some framing, and then they touched his head and stimulated part of his brain that he hadn't had an experience with before, and then he started to experience another self, and then that was the beginning of his journey. And then he said, wow, there's a space in my brain I can go to where everything is perfect. So what takes me away from that space and how do I nurture that space. And he showed us yesterday, you could rub the sides of your kind of temples. And he said he's sort of felt like stimulating that area has also kind of brought him back to the frontal lobe. And he kind of from there says, wow, I can feel the oneness, the everything is perfect state.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah, really beautiful.
That's the state I take all my clients into when they're in trance.
Yeah. You could start giving enlightening course, Andy.
Is that right? No way. Because I describe something that maybe no one's experienced. You know, it's so funny because a lot of times if you describe an experience another person hasn't had and you're convincing enough, then they all of a sudden can feel and want. Like, oh.
I get FOMO. Yeah, that is actually a space in your brain. That is that. It's just there. We just fill our brain with crap and we forget it's there, or it's just too busy you can't find it because it's full of people. It's there. It doesn't go anywhere. It's always
there. Yeah. And I think the more time you live in the space, then it's easier, because it's like if you said, okay, I'm 20% in, 80% out. I'm 30% in, 70. So basically it shifts. So when you're kind of more in it than out of it, and then it's easier to know when you're out of it, because it happens so quickly. You're not even sure, am I really feeling at peace with everything right now? Or am I thinking I should be there? And now I'm struggling, which is the most absurd thing. I'm struggling to be at peace.
But the most amazing thing is awareness, isn't it? When you know you're out of it, at least you know you've got it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's good. So who's in it all the time? I mean, I know I'm not.
Of course not. Yeah.
But, you know, as long as you know it's there,
that's
fine, isn't it? So that's a really cool story, though.
Yeah, it was really nice. Thank you for being with us. We've come to the end of our hour.
Oh.
Yeah.
We went over the hour, actually.
We did. I think it might be nice to bring you back on to do a show on hypnotherapy, because we actually didn't get into that. And I think it would be a nice discussion to have.
That would be good. I could even do a demo.
That would be great.
Yeah. You're in the room now.
When we say it, just to help me get context, is there any actual what do we call it? Hypnosis, or is it just called hypnotherapy? Just for my reference.
Hypnotherapy.
So there is hypnosis involved, potentially.
Yeah, it's definitely hypnosis involved. The hypno and the therapy together.
Every time she said "bam bam," she was like,
"Bam." She's seen how susceptible. She's seen how. What do we call it? What's the word you use for somebody who's more susceptible to that? Suggestible. Yeah, we're seeing how suggestible one is.
Yeah, you're highly suggestible, Bam.
I am highly suggestible.
Oh wow! Thank you for being with us. Yes.
Thank you so much for asking me. I've loved it.
It was great being with you. And tell your husband that.
Tell
Toby. Not my husband. It really isn't.
Tell your soon-to-be husband. Look at what are you trying? Are you waiting for other men? Maybe what's going on here? Why do you contest this? What's your hang-up with marriage?
Because I've done it once and it didn't work.
Did you really?
We didn't talk about.
We didn't talk about that. That's it for the next show then. Thank you. So tell Toby, your soon-to-be potential marriage partner, that we'd also like to get him on the show to discuss whatever it is I wrote him about at some point. Tell him we'll go.
Watch this, and then he'll say, "No, thanks."
We'll go easy on him. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, big love, big
love
hug.
you, Dipti.
Bye.
Bye. Fun. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for being.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what was going on for you, so I was really grateful when you said, "Hey, there's something going on for me right now." Nah.
It's a wonderful chaos.
And we like it that way.
I build escape rooms with Victor Milton.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. He, Victor, I've been having fun with Victor for years. He basically he's just a creative that's built and done so many weird, funky things. He's always on the cutting edge. I was there with him when they just started GPS tracking. He's like, Andy, I developed an app. Basically, you turn your phone on and it'll track you the whole day, and you'll have a line, and you'll see at the end of the day exactly where you've gone, how far you've gone. It was like way before like this kind of stuff existed. And, and then he just had idea after idea, and he lives with such intense creativity that now when he created these escape rooms all throughout Amsterdam, even at the Amsterdam History, or at the Rijksmuseum. So he creates escape rooms because his creativity, of course, is always pulsing. And I thought, how cool is it to discuss someone I've never been to one. I've heard a lot of people who've gone have had great experiences, but an escape room creator, and just get into his head and see what makes for a good escape room, and what drives that creativity. And I thought that would be fun to have him on to discuss tomorrow.
And we're going to do that, Andy, on
Hey, wonderful chaos. I love how just before we go, when did you start to take control of that statement?
Well, when I decide that we're equals.
Oh, great. Love it. Bye.